Right, so AEW's WrestleDream pay-per-view is taking place this Saturday, and to be honest, I bet you didn't even know that. This pay-per-view has crept right up, and to be honest, I don't think the build to it has been great from AEW. And last night's 3-hour special AEW Dynamite and Collision combined episode really encapsulated a lot of the current problems that AEW's product is facing. There's been some strange AEW booking decisions as of late, and once again, this show really has a lot of them. So like the video and subscribe as we talk about last night, the Wednesday the 15th of October edition of AEW Dynamite and Collision, a special 3-hour combined episode of both shows. As the show opens with Toni Storm and Chris Statlander, who are doing a backstage interview talking about their upcoming title match. They exchange some back and forth before they invite each other out to the ring to settle this, and they go out and they brawl and start fighting, with Toni Storm ultimately standing tall going into the pay-per-view, which would usually indicate that she's gonna lose, and I was kind of predicting that anyway. But yeah, a fine angle to open the show. I think Toni Storm and Chris Statlander has been one of the few sufficiently built up matches for WrestleDream this Saturday. We'll talk about some of the others later on and the ones that aren't. As the first match to open the show is the Hurt Syndicate of Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin taking on the Gates of Agony, Toa Liona and Bishop Khan. Nice little meat fest right here. Two teams that I really like in AEW. Obviously Bobby Lashley and Shelton have been on it since joining. Shelton especially, I've really enjoyed his work in AEW, and the Gates of Agony are a damn underrated tag team in my opinion. Two teams with great aura. And yeah, the GOA actually get the win here, a first pinfall loss for the Hurt Syndicate here. When there was that whole controversy of the Hurt Syndicate refusing to put people over, there was literally a report that said they were willing to put over certain teams like Private Party and the GOA, which they've done here. So yeah, anyone that wants to say the Hurt Syndicate are unprofessional and don't want to put people over, you can sod it. We then get a pre-tape with Jon Moxley and Darby Allin where they do an angle where they're talking to each other in like a prison and they're doing a prison visit. This was easily the best part of the entire show, by the way. This was really well done and really well made. They both get their words in as Darby talks about joining the Death Riders, but it's Moxley that is the one that's stopping him from doing that. It's Moxley that he doesn't respect. And then Darby Allin is blindsided by Pac, who jumps him along with the rest of the Death Riders, and they are trying to sell this angle of Darby Allin not being in 100% condition going into the show. Yeah, like I said, I thought this was a really well done angle and probably the best part across the 3-hour block of shows. As next up is Roderick Strong versus Claudio Castagnoli. A shout out to two of these guys here, as they are two of the best TV wrestlers out there for sure. Just sheer consistency. And this was a fine little match. I thought they could have definitely gone a little harder, but like I said, consistency is key with these guys. It was a solid 3.25 star match, you know what I'm saying. Claudio Castagnoli does actually get the win, which I thought was an interesting decision. He wins clean. The match was hard hitting. It was a decent one, like I said, but I thought Roderick Strong should have won this one. He's been on the losing end a lot recently, and I want to see him picking up some wins. We then get a pre-tape with the Don Callis family, minus Andrade, as Don Callis is celebrating his birthday, having dinner with the family. He has a video message from Takeshita, who can't be there, but Okada accidentally turns it off. Andrade has not been seen or mentioned since he re-debuted for AEW 2 weeks ago, and apparently it's because he had a 90-day no-compete and either didn't know or just didn't tell anyone. Yeah, an absolutely hilarious situation that has just unfolded with Andrade. The last 24 hours of headlines I've seen with Andrade have just been hilarious. We then get trios action, as it is the Don Callis family of Josh Alexander, Mark Davis and Hechicero against Kenny Omega and the Jurassic Express. Jack Perry and Kenny Omega teaming again doesn't really make much sense to me, but we're here, and what can I say, this one was just fine. I am really fatigued with 6-man tags and all-star tags on AEW, in particular ones with the Don Callis family, because they're just every single show. I don't mind the Don Callis family as a group, but they wrestle multi-man tags every single event. Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express get the win. The crowd were pretty loud for this one, I'll give them that. Probably the loudest they were for any match of this show, but again, I don't really care for these multi-man tags anymore. Next up is a women's division contest. It's Sky Blue of the Triangle of Madness taking on Jamie Hayter. Sky Blue, by the way, especially in this match, really enforces this, what I'm about to say. I think she has quietly been one of the most consistent performers in AEW this year. Great seller and great bumper in particularly, and she really did it well in this match here with Hayter using her brute force, and it really got hard hitting in the final act of the match. And yeah, they got the crowd on their side by the end of it as Jamie Hayter wins in a pretty decent TV match here, probably my favourite match across both shows. We then get Tekla on the screen post-match. She says on Saturday it's gonna get toxic to the core. I feel like this is the first time I've heard Tekla talk. I could be wrong. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't great though either. We then get an interview with the CEO 10 Belts Ultimo Mercedes Moné. It's another just generic backstage interview segment with Mercedes Moné. I feel like she's not really been doing much recently in AEW worth of note. She's discussing her record-breaking TBS title reign and her upcoming CMLL match. And they talk about WrestleDream as it seems as though Mercedes Moné is just doing a segment at the show. Probably the 1 millionth title celebration segment for breaking the TBS record, but yeah, she's not in a match. Mercedes Moné hasn't been really involved in any storylines recently in AEW since losing the belt to Toni Storm. She's kind of felt like a guest in AEW, so this doesn't really come as a shock. But wow, not having Mercedes Moné wrestling at your pay-per-view with this roster shortage is a weird one to me. AEW are obviously doing Jamie Hayter and Tekla at the pay-per-view. I believe this is only the first or maybe the second time that a non-title women's match has made it on a pay-per-view show, and they could have broke even further ground by having 3 women's matches on the main card and having Mercedes Moné wrestle, but they chose not to inexplicably. I guess we'll see what she does at WrestleDream, but up next it's LFI up against the Ops with Hangman Page on commentary. This match is for the trios belts, and I'm not gonna lie, I love both teams. I love the Ops, I love LFI, but Hangman Page and Samoa Joe are currently feuding for the world title. Surely we would want a bit more of a focused angle between the two on this show to send the angle home, but rather we're just getting him commentating a trios title defense, a generic match. And yeah, I definitely did want a little more from this match, I'm not gonna lie. I think LFI have been built up pretty decent recently, and I actually would have liked to see them win this match. Part of me thought they were going to do the switch, and I thought maybe they should do it, but lo and behold, the Ops would beat LFI. And post-match, Hangman Adam Page helps clear LFI out the ring, and Samoa Joe hands him the belt, and they walk out kind of staring down all intensely. Not really a strong way to head into a world title pay-per-view program, and I have the feeling that this isn't going to main event the show, and that Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin is, which I think it's a bit of a problem that the world title isn't main eventing your pay-per-view. But anyway, that was the Dynamite portion of the show as we move into the Collision portion of the episode now, as the Collision episode opens with Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta of the Death Riders up against Orange Cassidy and Kyle O'Reilly of the Conglomeration. Orange Cassidy's return has not felt like a big deal, and he's just gone back to being a regular player in AEW. And this match was also just fine. A lot of the matches on this show were solid 6 out of 10s, not really memorable in any way, and this was definitely one of those. Like I said, it's fine, didn't really blow me away, probably went on a little bit too long, going 12 minutes, but the Death Riders do get the win over the Conglomeration. Once again, Orange Cassidy has been booked to look very weak since he returned to AEW, not gonna lie. After that, though, we have Darby Allin who comes out to the ring as the Conglomeration and the Death Riders are brawling. Darby Allin, he is in no condition right now to fight with Mox after his beatdown that he gave to him in the jail. He's beaten down by every Death Riders member on his way to the ring, but he shows no quit and makes it into the ring before he shows Moxie the AEW flag, says it's never too late to say he quit, as Mox hits the Death Rider on him and leaves. A good 2 angles across both shows to send this story home. A good talking segment pre-tape which had a beatdown in it to set the seeds for the storyline of Darby Allin's condition and lead to this beatdown later on to really cement that going into their match at WrestleDream. And the Mox and Darby stuff really is dominating AEW TV. It's not a problem for them, but rather a problem with AEW booking where they need more focus on other parts of the show and not just Mox and Darby, and the Death Riders of course as well, who dominated this show in terms of screen time and exposure and storyline progression. Yeah, we need to get that shit spread out, AEW, come on now. As we move on from that to Megan Bayne, who is out, and she's joined by FTR and Stokely. Megan Bayne gets on the mic and cuts her first live promo in AEW. It's not the worst, it's quite stoic. Obviously, she clearly doesn't have much live promo experience in AEW. This is her first. She'll get better. FTR and Stokely get their words in. It did kind of feel like they were stalling for time a bit here though, before Jet Speed, Willow and Harley Cameron interrupts them on the screen. They trade words back and forth and then they come out and brawl, which then leads to Harley Cameron versus Megan Bayne's match. So this angle, Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford against Harley Cameron and Willow, and FTR against Jet Speed, these are two matches that are happening on Tailgate Brawl, which is basically the pre-show for WrestleDream. I don't know why a pre-show match is getting an in-ring talking segment and like an actual go-home angle that many of the other main card matches could probably have used. AEW's priorities seem weird. They could have at least put these matches on the main card or did like a big 8-person tag on the main card. I don't know, anything like that. As for the Megan Bayne versus Harley Cameron match itself though, it was what it was really. I think Harley Cameron got a bit too much offense in, and she did kick out of a bit too much. I like both Harley and Megan Bayne. I think Harley is a very important part of the AEW women's division for TV. She's always doing something. But Megan Bayne is someone I think has been a bit lost since she lost to Toni Storm in the AEW product, and I want to see a bit more focus on Megan Bayne and this Top God stable they've got going. Megan Bayne did get the win though, as herself and the Top God stand tall going into Tailgate Brawl. By the way, where was Penelope Ford on this show? Another random absence on this show I'm not sure about. As we move on from that into Eddie Kingston and Hook, who are doing a backstage promo where they say they're gonna be at Tailgate on Saturday. Neither of them look like they care or give a single SHIT, and Kingston didn't know the name of the show. He didn't know the name of Tailgate. I have no idea what AEW is doing with Eddie Kingston's return. It has been odd choice after odd choice, and he instantly just feels unimportant, and he's not been elevated in the slightest. In fact, he's been the opposite, unelevated or whatever the word is. Probably not that. Then there's an acclaimed backstage skit, whatever, and we go to our main event, which is another trios match with the Don Callis family. It's Carl Fletcher, Rocky Romero, and Lance Archer against Mark Briscoe and Brodido. I said it again, I don't mind the Don Callis family, but I am just fatigued seeing them do these multi-man tags on every single show. 2 on the same show is egregious. I get there's meant to be Dynamite and Collision, 2 separate shows, but nah, this was one broadcast, okay? So it's egregious doing 2 here. Also, this match wasn't even announced before the show. It was announced during the show's broadcast, so yeah, the main event of a 3-hour special wasn't even advertised. Another odd choice from AEW. And yeah, again, it was fine. It was exactly what you'd expect, but man, I was not locked into the show anymore by this point. It's near 4 AM, and I was seeing an acclaimed comedy skit on my screen right before the main event. I was checked out. The babyfaces win here as Bandito pins Rocky Romero, who was obviously only in this match to take the pin, and Briscoe and Fletcher brawl to the back, and that ends the show with WrestleDream ahead this Saturday. And yeah, the one word I can have to describe this 3-hour Dynamite Collision is a word I've used a lot for every match on this show really, and that's fine. It's like a 6 to 7.5 out of 10 kind of show here, just very average to be honest. It just felt cold and didn't feel like a go-home show. And again, another problem that AEW just keeps running into, 2 women's matches. Come on man, it's a 3-hour show. Only 2 is ridiculous. There were no good in-ring angles to send these matches home other than Mox and Darby, and they used pre-tapes to do that a lot on this show, which I don't have an issue with, but they over-relied on them here, and it's the last show before a pay-per-view. We need strong angles. We need these wrestlers to get into the ring and talk to each other in front of a crowd and sell what they're fighting for. I ask again, how many people even knew the pay-per-view was this Saturday? The build to WrestleDream has only seen a few matches with sufficient build in my opinion, which are Tony versus Chris Statlander and Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin. You could also argue the Hurt Syndicate versus The Demand, but that has been more of a TV feud, but it's been alright. I have appreciated it so far. Hangman vs. Joe should have been a lot better. It needed a much better go-home angle tonight here, and everything else also deserved a lot more. thought Fletcher versus Briscoe deserved more, especially after he beat MJF, Mark Briscoe did. Hayter and Thekla, I think, has been fine. There's been good wrestling and good in-ring action leading up to this final match between the two, and it's been a long build, but there's no in-ring talking segment between the two, and Thekla finally spoke about Jamie Hayter and her motivations for the first time only last night. And then the WrestleDream card itself, there's no Mercedes Moné on the card, no Kenny Omega either. CEO, have her face Sari or a Riho rematch, or Ty Mello or someone like that, or a returning Hikaru Shida, or even Camille. I don't care, I'm riffing off, I'm naming anyone, just do that. And Kenny Omega, sure, he can't face Andrade anymore because he's not available, and I'm guessing maybe they were going to do something with Kota Ibushi, but he's been injured now too. But why not do him against Josh Alexander, for example? Or Hechichero, or El Clon, have him make his debut against Kenny Omega in a big way. No Eddie Kingston on the card, he's just going to be in action on the pre-show, which is great. And no Orange Cassidy either on the main card. These are two guys who just came back, two baby faces for AEW who have just returned during a time where there is a babyface shortage in AEW and they still can't get on the main card. It makes no sense. But yeah, going back to the show, the formatting of it was just weird as well. AEW has done a few of these longer Dynamite / Collision combo episodes, and they always format them differently each time. Sometimes they treat it as one 3-hour, multi-hour broadcast with a main event that fits that, and other times the last hour of the show is treated as its own Collision episode and is more or less just the graveyard spot, and it's just a random assortment of matches for the last hour, and the latter was very much the case with this episode here. The main things I liked about this show were the Mox and Darby Allin stuff. I thought Jamie Hayter and Sky Blue was the best match across both shows, to be honest, and Tony and Chris had a pretty decent opening angle as well too, but everything else on this show is pretty skippable and forgettable in my opinion. Also, another quick rant about something weird that AEW does is their YouTube content strategy. Why am I looking at 4 videos of the same thing here? And this is for every match and segment on this show. AEW, I'm not even kidding, hire me as your channel manager. I have no idea what this content strategy is. Anyway, before I head out, let me do my WrestleDream predictions real quick. Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley. I'm actually going to go for Jon Moxley. Hangman Page defending against Samoa Joe. I got Hangman Page to retain, of course. Samoa Joe also announced recently that he's probably going to be retiring at the end of this current AEW contract. Oh my word, does that absolutely suck ass. We are losing so many all-time greats in the next couple of years. Do you know how screwed we are? Chris Statlander defending against Tony Storm. I got Statlander retaining. The Jurassic Express against the Young Bucks will go for the Jurassic Express. I think Carl Fletcher will retain against Mark Briscoe. I reckon Brodido will defeat the Don Callis family. I reckon Thekla will defeat Jamie Hayter and probably go on to feud with Statlander after that, I would assume. And I think the Hurt Syndicate will win against the Demand, but I think the Demand should win it, to be honest. I started a bit weird there, but I'll leave that in because it's 18 minutes, so if you're a true fan, you will have heard that. But regardless, I think WrestleDream should be a decent enough show. I just think there's not much heat going into it, and I will do a review of WrestleDream after it's taken place as well. But that is going to be it from me in this video, guys. Smash the like button if you did enjoy this AEW Dynamite review, and all my current problems with the AEW product and this Dynamite Collision episode. Comment down below what you thought of this episode. I'll see you all in the next one. Subscribe notifications on so you don't miss it. I'll see you there. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.